Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So I've seen this thing going around Bookstagram where people are choosing their next read based on 1-star reviews. And I'm sure other people have vlogged this and done this on YouTube as well. So if you know of any, please let me know down below so I can give them a shout out. If I find any, I will link them down below. And I'll link to a couple of the posts that I saw on Bookstagram because they're hilarious. Some people are so clever with their 1-star reviews. So I thought it would be fun to go through a stack of books that I'm kind of in the mood for, but I don't know what to pick up next. Read through a couple of the 1-star reviews with you, share them, and then choose which one made me most interested in reading it, because I do think sometimes a 1-star review can sell me on a book, which is just the nature of reading and reviewing and why it's so great. I'm not going to read out paragraph long reviews, though I do appreciate those. I just think for the video, short snarky ones are the way to go. I'm going to read you a couple of the reviews or one of the reviews just depending on what I find, and then I'll tell you what the book is afterwards to see if maybe you can guess, because I think all of the ones I've chosen are pretty popular. So let's do this. I haven't looked at these beforehand, so who knows what I'm going to find. Okay, this review is a little bit long, but it's hilarious, so I have to read it out to you. It says, "Oh my god, I just learned 2 people wrote this book. Yikes, 2 bad writers who don't know anything about animals. This book doesn't transport me into this world, a world of animals. It could easily be humans instead of animals. She doesn't use good animal descriptors. A bear would not gently take the bottle. He would be gruff and clumsy. It reminds me of Nora Roberts' sci-fi. The only time you know you're in a sci-fi book is when the character is in their airplane car or they drink a tube of Pepsi. When the sheriff led the raccoon off, I would have written with a bribe of cookie. The raccoon followed him. It is insufferable. The fox raises its hackles. Not believable to me. The only time you know that they are animals is when she refers to their paw or that they are creatures. And OMFG, did the beavers really need to act utterly human in a bad marriage? FFS, stop projecting. I was really put off by that BS. Barf emoji. Oh yeah, she could have done some fun stuff with the food. How boring are blueberry muffins? DNF, insufferable. This author knows nothing about animal behavior." And I'll read you one more, then I'll tell you what the book is and give you my thoughts on these reviews. So this one says, "DNF, too cute for me. I'm not sure why I would care about characters that are animals, but clearly some readers like them, and I am a reader who likes them." So this is Shady Hollow by Juno Black, and this has been getting some love lately. It's just a cozy fantasy, and I think sometimes maybe people take it too seriously, that yeah, the characters are animals, but they're not acting like animals. It's not believable. Some other things, is it believable that animals would talk and form these kind of friendships with different species and stuff? It says, "The first book in a Shady Hollow series in which we are introduced to the village of Shady Hollow, a place where woodland creatures live together in harmony, until a curmudgeonly toad turns up dead and the local reporters there to solve the case." So it is a cozy mystery with fantasy, so, and every character is an animal. So I don't think you're supposed to take it too seriously, and I don't know why somebody would pick this up if they don't care about characters that are animals, but that is just me. It's something that I really care about and I think will be a good time, but I just thought that first review was hilarious and it actually makes me more intrigued to read it. And this blueberry muffin slander, I love a blueberry muffin. Okay, on to the next one. It says, "Pretentious, boring drivel, word salad, nothing makes sense, so many words, nothing happened, an author desperate to hear their own thoughts." Now I can get behind a book that is no plot, just vibes, you know this, so that makes me more excited to try it. Okay, and the last one says, "This book was a giant dick measuring contest for the characters to spew nonsensical philosophy on every goddamn page for 380 pages. If I wanted to read a book with zero plot about pretentious assholes with no personality, I'd reread This Secret History. Thanks." So with that, you could probably guess what this is, and that is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. Of course, I haven't read this yet. Can you believe that? This is the Fairy Loot edition. I don't tend to love pretentious characters, but if I'm reading Dark Academia, they better be pretentious a-holes. And that is what I want. I liked The Secret History. I would reread it. I love When We Were Villains. This is what I expect from my Dark Academia. So that intrigues me. I'm okay with reading books about people reading. I don't know, that's what I kind of am hoping for this. I've been told so many times there's not much of a plot to this, and I am okay with that. So between these two, I don't know which one is winning for me now, but some hilarious reviews for sure. And this one definitely has a lot more 1-star reviews than the last one, but this is a more popular book. Okay, there's only one review for this next book that I think works for the premise of this video, and it is hilarious. And this book is really popular, and the fact that it has only 87 1-star reviews is promising. So it says, this book is pitched as having Bridgerton vibes, and to be fair, it does have them. The only problem is that I wanted a Simon and ended up with a Colin instead. The cover of the book is brighter than the personalities of our characters. We have a misunderstood but deeply kind and hot Mr. Magical Dick, and a heroine quirky enough to sass him out of his misery. And you may have guessed that this is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. That's a hilarious review. I just don't think that that beats the other two in terms of my intrigue based on the review itself. And I am with her. I'd rather take a Simon over a Colin, so that makes me have to readjust my expectations for this one a little bit. I've had this for ages. I just need a chance to get to it, but it's not in this video. So on to the next one. It says, I guess I really did not like this one. I just couldn't get past the fact that Saoirse really is a Mary Sue. Nobody can suffer that much and still be a good, pure-hearted, loving, and caring person. Somewhere in the middle, I just did not feel sorry for her anymore. She just annoyed me. Nevertheless, it may be a very good breakup reading, the suffer a lot but then finds love type, or perhaps I'm just too cynical. I found this book slow and mildly dreadful. The quest was a long and stupid one, full of needless suffering. I hated it. If you like tragic fairy tales, then this is for you. Personally, I read to escape the horrors of the world, and the ending this book brought about was not enough to console me. The romance felt shallow, and the only thing that made me want to do was cry. Skip it and find a better fantasy book with more magic, adventure, or perhaps happiness. Well, I don't think every book needs to be full of happy and cheer. And this one is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I started this and was loving it, and then I had to start a readathon and just never returned to it. So I wanted to get to this one, but I just don't think that the one-star reviews of this are that harsh, or that they really make me want to read this that much. The majority of the one-star reviews are talking about a specific scene in here that they weren't expecting. So if you are going to pick this up, it is good to know that there is an essay scene in here that apparently is quite graphic. I was warned of that ahead of time, so I knew that. But this, like, the complaints about this one being slow and sad, those aren't negative to me. Those are things that I want, but not the book for this reading vlog. Unfortunately, I'm going to do one more because I have to leave. My neighbor needs help giving her cat medication so that she can take her to the vet. It's a whole ordeal. I have to do this every single time, and it's hilarious, but I know she'll be texting me any second. This book sucked and made me furious. I thought it was Harry Potter in Russia, but it was without any fun or whimsy or joy, and the magic or whatever it was so impenetrable and confusing that you couldn't understand any of it. I didn't even understand the end. There are parts of the books where she's required to read the long pages of text that are in a language she doesn't understand, and they do some deep inside her brain, and she wakes up and doesn't remember or understand what happened. This is what it felt like to read this book. I hate it. Don't read it. That is hilarious because I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe this book as whimsical, so that is not the reason I would pick this up myself. Bleak, cold, depressing, stilted, the way it made me feel, like finding pieces of glass in your dinner. The description says it has a distinctive Russian sensibility, and boy does it. Wow, that's harsh. But this is Vita Nostra. And I've heard incredible things about this. I have heard it's confusing, that it's cold, that it's dark academia. I don't think just because something is dark academia doesn't mean it's Hogwarts. And I never got that impression about it, so that was an interesting review. And I've been dying to read this one. I've heard incredible things about it, and that you kind of have to just embrace that you're not going to understand everything that is going on. So let me decide here. So I think these three are the ones I'm torn between. Two dark academias, which is interesting because I think dark academia is an easy genre to dislike and to pick on. And I think the same could be said for cozy mysteries, cozy fantasy. Just a matter of what I'm in the mood for. To be honest with you, I think it's between the Atlas 6 and Shady Hollow, but I have to go with the Atlas 6 because it had more one-star reviews that were hilarious to me. It's a more popular book. It's one that's been on my shelf longer. I feel like this one I can fly through. This one I need an excuse to pick up. So now I'm going to read this to see if I agree that it's a 1-star, or if the 1-star reviews that made me want to read this make this a 5-star. You know what I mean. So let's do this thing. Who knows when I'll pick this up for real, because I'm in the middle of a few other things, but I just had this idea and had to film it. So I have been out of town for a few days, and of course I brought books with me, did no reading, but I did get home last night and I read 26 pages, 2 chapters of the Atlas 6. How pretty is this edition? And the prologue as well. And of course there's not much to say because I am just 25 pages in, but I did notice that when you think of the word pretentious, and so many people describe this as pretentious, the review that I read called this pretentious and just said I might as well just read The Secret History. This is very different in terms of writing style. As much as I loved The Secret History, it was like a slog to get through. The writing is a bit over the top. It's a bit overwrought, but it works for the subgenre. I would say this is accessible. If you're looking to get into dark academia, but it's intimidating, this is a good one to start with. So far I'm 25 pages in, but I am finding it really easy to read. So that is a bonus. That is something I was not expecting from this. I've only met 3 of the characters so far. And I do want to mention that I'm immersion reading this, which I think is helping me because the audiobook is full cast. And the first book that I read in July was Their Vicious Games. This is an arc. It comes out, I'm sure it's out by the time you see this video. And I do recommend that one. And I think I would call that one dark academia, but in a new and refreshing way. But that one also has a competition like this does. And that is what I am discovering that I like. In dark academia, I think it adds another twist to it. The stakes in Their Vicious Games were definitely higher because that one I would compare to the Squid Games. This one, I mean, I'm not even at the competition yet. We're just setting it up and just figuring out who's going to be part of the competition and why and things like that. But that is a setup that I appreciate and like. So those are things that I'm into so far. I think every edition of this book has these illustrations of the characters in them, which just adds to the reading experience. And yeah, I just think I'm not that picky when it comes to dark academia. I have read many of them, and the only one I didn't love was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. That just wasn't for me, but honestly, I love The Secret History, When We Were Villains, Plain Bad Heroines is one of my favorite books of all time. That's just a subgenre that works for me. And I think you can do some really interesting things within it, and I think that there's potential with that competition, so we'll see how I feel. So I just filmed a different video, but I had to come on here and update you on the Atlas 6 because I'm a third of the way through. I'm 134 pages into this, and I had to stop to read an obligation read for something else, but I'm so excited to get back to this once I finish that book because I'm into it. I love this, and I was talking with some friends who say that this is one of their best books ever, which is exciting for me because I think that when you hear of a hyped book like this one, it's easy to remember the negative reviews as opposed to the positive ones, but I do forget that so many people adore this book. It's popular for a reason, and I'm having a good time with it, and that might be because my expectations were that it would be what I'm getting. So I wrote a few notes, actually quite a few notes, as I was going through this because there was a lot that I wanted to say. And I have read a lot of dark academia, but the fantasy element in this makes it stand out, and I don't think that all the magic is going to be explained. Each of the characters in this is chosen to be part of this society and participate in this competition because they all have different abilities, and they just have them. They're not going to go into depth about why. You just kind of have to accept that that's the way it is, and I'm okay with that. And something I think that stands out to me the most is that in the review I read, they talked about how unlikable the characters were, how pretentious they are. But something I have really come to notice is I like an unlikable character. And a character doesn't have to be likable to be interesting. Actually, the more unlikable they are, the more interesting they are to me. Because I just want to know their character motivations. I want to see their relationships, get their inner monologue. As long as I am compelled by them, I don't care how likable they are. And I actually think that every character in here so far does have something that's a little bit likable about them. They're not hated characters by any means yet, but I mean, I still have 2/3 of the book to go. I could hate them all by the end. They're not perfect, but I don't expect them to be, especially in this genre. And I am so interested in them and intrigued by them. So that's all I want in any book, really. And actually, Willow from Books and Bow just made a video talking about the importance of unlikable characters, and I'm going to leave that down below so that you can watch that because I think she had some really interesting points that they touch on and really worth a watch. And it was just so timely that they posted that video as I was reading this because it's exactly what I was thinking about. So I'm going to leave that down below. Please check that out. So far, it's reading more like a character-driven book, which I appreciate, and we're slowly seeing how they interact together. We're not deep into the competition. I don't know a lot of that's going on here, but their interactions are what intrigues me the most and keeps me reading. And actually, there's a side character in Nico's POV who I love. It's his best friend, and I hope that he gets more page time because I love that dynamic between them. And it makes Nico more likable, seeing how he interacts with his best friend. I don't know how you could not like that part of Nico. And yeah, he's a bit of an arse. They all are. But obviously he's got a soft side to him, so I appreciate him. One thing I am noticing though is you can tell that the author, Olivia Blake, has favorite characters who she focuses on more, Nico being one of them. And some of the other characters, though they have POVs, those chapters seem to be shorter, and I'm just not feeling as connected to them because I don't think that Olivia Blake is wanting me to be as connected to them, or that she is as passionate about writing those characters as some of the others. So that is definitely something that I am noticing while I'm going through this. But yeah, I think that this is way better than I anticipated, way better than that 1-star review would have led me to believe. But I understand where they're coming from, because if you don't like pretentious characters and you don't like your characters unlikable, you're not gonna like this. But I think that's just kind of the nature of Dark Academia. I feel like I keep saying this, but if I picked up a Dark Academia and there was no pretentious characters, I'd be disappointed, because that's what I look for. Give me that. I am about halfway, just over halfway through the Atlas 6 at this point, and my excitement for it is waning a little bit. I'm starting to see what people are talking about when they say it's just a lot of people studying, because that's what it feels like. Where's this competition I was promised? So far it just seems like a lot of researching, a lot of conversations, and while the character interactions, there's some interesting moments in there about how the characters, their relationships are developing, and the tension that's caused by the fact that, you know, there are 6 people competing for 5 spots. So they're forming some bonds. There are some like antagonistic relationships as well. There's some romances brewing that we get some steamy scenes. I don't think I had heard there were steamy scenes in here, but we definitely have those, and every single relationship in this is unhealthy. But that's just going to be the nature of this setup, and I do think those dynamics are interesting. So I'm still into some of the character moments, but I feel like in that first half of this video I was really excited about this competition. I was so hyped for this competition. 50% in, not really getting it. So my excitement for it has waned. I've read 2 things in between this now, and that is never a good sign for me. So that is telling me I'm not loving this as much as I had hoped. But I do think for a lot of fantasy, I know this is often the opposite as a lot of readers, but I have noticed that in fantasy, the setup is normally the most exciting thing for me. I love being introduced to the characters, but then the middle is normally pretty slow, and that is how I'm feeling about this. But this is like super slow. It is a lot of really pretentious conversations, but it's the character moments that keep me reading and not DNFing this book. So we will see. You never know what could happen in the second half. I have some ideas about where this is going. I think it's kind of predictable in terms of the setup of having these 6 people compete for 5 spots. And then, like, what is Atlas's agenda? Atlas is the man who reached out to all 6 of these people and chose them, but there's something going on with him. There's no way that this is all that's happening. So maybe there'll be some interesting reveals where that is concerned. But yeah, definitely not a plot-driven book by any sense of the word. And I've read some good competition books, especially like Their Vicious Games that I mentioned in the first half of this video. It was the first book I read in July. That had a really good competition. So then you read something like Fourth Wing, and then I read Serpent in the Wings at Night. So I read a lot of fun competition fantasy this year, and this one's just not holding up in comparison to those, at least so far. I'm 70% into it, and now it's a slog, and I hate that because it had so much potential. I loved like the first 30%, and then the middle dragged, and now I'm getting near the end, and I just don't think I care enough, because though these characters are unlikable, and I like unlikable and interesting characters, I just don't think I care about them. So that is never a good thing. And again, I think I'm just so caught up in the fact that I was hoping for some kind of competition here, and we're just not getting it. And I hate to keep comparing this book to other books within the genre. I don't think that that is always fair to do, but because it's one of my favorite subgenres, and I'm trying to think of all the other ones that I've read and why I love them so much, I think that those ones always had something else to hold on to. So you had your unlikable characters, you had your pretentious writing, you had your eye roll moments. That's just the nature of it. But there was also something else that kept you turning the pages. So The Secret History, those characters are way more unlikable than the ones in this, but kind of like that about them. And there is a murder plot that happens in there that keeps you reading, and our main perspective in that book kind of ends up in this group and is like a fish out of water. So he himself as a character was interesting to read about. And then Plain Bad Heroines, one of my favorite books of all time. That one has a historical element. It's told in 2 timelines. It leans more towards horror as well. So that was really unique. And then If We Were Villains, I keep calling it When We Were Villains. I don't know why, maybe because of that book When We Were Dragons. I keep doing that, but it's If We Were Villains. And that one opens up with a scene where our main character is being released from prison, and he is telling the detective who arrested him the real story of what happened. So that alone is intriguing. And there's also like a murder mystery plot in that one. This one, nothing for me to hold on to. No plot whatsoever to be seen at all to keep me intrigued, to be honest with you. And sure, the whole mystery about what is Atlas's motives and what's really going on here might be interesting, but it's not enough for me. So I don't know, I'm just really sad about it. And I was hoping I would come on here and be like, these 1-star reviews were wrong, or this 1-star review that made me want to read it was a positive experience, but it's just not turning out that way. And I don't think I'll update you again until I get to the end, because I'm just gonna sit here and finish it so I can move on, because I do not want to be in a slump, because June was a bit slumpy for me and July's been going well so far, and I just want to finish this book and move on. Okay, I finished the Atlas 6 last night, and let's talk about it. I had to sleep on it to decide on my rating, but I'm going with the 2.5. I rounded up to 3 on Goodreads, which is disappointing. And I do agree with some of what was said in all the 1-star reviews that I read. But the thing about these characters being really unlikable and kind of assholes is that I wish that Olivia Blake had leaned into that even more. When I'm reading a dark academia, I want to loathe the characters. That is what I expect. This, I was just, by the end of it, kind of neutral on them. I didn't feel anything for them, not even hatred. And that is not what I want. I think that a character in a book should make you feel something, whether it's good or bad. To be meh about them by the end of the book is not a good feeling, and that means that by the end of this, I didn't care what happened to them. I wasn't rooting for anybody's demise. I wasn't cheering for anybody's success. I was just middle of the road with it. So that's why I'm just giving it the average rating. And something else I expect in dark academia and why I love it so much is the setting. I've said this before, that I often think of myself as atmosphere first, then characters, and then plot in terms of what I like. So this is about what if the Library of Alexandria was still around, still existed, but how did that become so boring? And why didn't I feel like we were there? And I just never felt fully immersed in this world. And then in the middle part, it just became boring, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fantasy elements and the discussions that the characters have about that, because it felt to me a lot of the magic relies on physics, which is something that I am so terrible at. I dropped out of physics in high school. I am just not physics minded. I just don't get it. And then all the time loop stuff, that's just not something I'm interested in at all. It's hard because the first 100 pages I really liked. I thought we were building up to something. I thought we were gonna have some great character development. I thought we were gonna build some really interesting relationships. But in the end, the romances I couldn't have cared less about. The stakes, while they were high, they didn't feel high to me because I just didn't care. And it's a bummer because this book is so beautiful, and you know I'm gonna keep it. I just have to keep it on my shelves because it is too pretty, and I won't be continuing on with this series though. So yeah, that's a bummer, but interesting in the terms of this video that while I do agree with the reviewers, I wish this pushed it even further. I wanted this to go into the secret history level of hatred for the characters, because at least that's interesting. You know what I mean? And it's such a 180 from how I felt about this in the beginning, but it's not a 1-star for me. It's a 2.5 because there was some potential there. I do like Olivia Blake's writing. I'm not writing her off as an author at all. I know she has a lot of other books that aren't dark academia, and part of the problem might be that I'm just fitting that genre into a box, and I expect certain things in dark academia that this didn't deliver. So yeah, that could be a me problem. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one, because I feel like this is one that you either love or hate. That seems to be the trend that I see. People either adore this or they're really let down by it. So I would love to discuss this. And then let me know if you liked this style of video, because it was a fun thing to do, and I do think that there are 1-star reviews out there that make me want to try something, and I don't know that I would have gone to this anytime soon if it weren't for that review. And even though it was a letdown for me, I'm glad to have a Fairy Loot book down, because I've had this for ages now. So that's a good feeling, and now I can move on to something else. So once again, thank you for your support. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.